Another argument that is constantly thrown at us when this issue is raised or when this issue is discussed is, why is it that India objects to Rohingya Muslims being housed in this country or rehabilitated in this country on religious grounds? Our position is very, very simple. We have 1,000 years of historical experience to learn from. The change in demographics is already playing a huge role in various parts of this country, Kashmir being the most prominent example and the worst of examples possible. The existence of a democratic, pluralist, secular India is contingent on the demographic balance being maintained. It's as clear as that. And anything that upsets the demographics is not welcome. It's not possible for a sovereign government or a democratic government to ask a certain population or a certain community to breed less or to produce less. But it is certainly within the power of a democratic government of a sovereign nation to prevent external factors from influencing the demographics of this country. So I think it would be wrong on the part of India at this stage to go and tell any minority community or any community for that matter to produce less or reproduce less or procreate less. Or to say that you're breeding too much and you're causing a demographic inversion. That's something that the government cannot do at this stage at least. But the very least that the government can do is to prevent external factors which influence the demographic balance as far as India is concerned. Therefore, we need to learn from the Bangladeshi immigration experience, the devastating effect that it has had on the culture of the Northeast, on the law and order situation in the Northeast. In fact, I think a telling document in this regard would be the 42-page report of Governor S.K. Sinha, when he had made a recommendation to the Union government in 98-99 that the government needs to deport illegal immigrants from Assam on a war footing, and the kind of law and order issues it had created. In fact, there's even a better document. The 175th Law Commission report categorically recommends the creation of an anti-immigration force, so to speak, or setting up of a separate infrastructure to go after illegal immigrants on the similar lines as the immigration infrastructure that the United States of America has. There's a good reason for this. The official figures, if they are to be trusted, tell us that there are 2 to 3 crore illegal Bangladeshi immigrants in India. As usual, I think I would have to add another 50% or 60% to this official figure, and that takes us to a good figure of about 4.5 crores, who are spread across the country in parts of Tamil Nadu and whatnot. It's not possible for the government to deport all these people without having a dedicated infrastructure whose only job is to identify illegal immigrants and ensure that they're prosecuted for eviction. This is something that the government needs to do. Unfortunately, the sterling and stellar recommendations of the 175th Law Commission in this particular regard have fallen on deaf ears. No government, regardless of its stated ideology, stated position in its election manifesto, stated position during electoral speeches and whatnot, has taken the initiative to take illegal immigration seriously. We need to understand that after years of turmoil, after years of bloodshed, and after years of multiple holocausts that this subcontinent has seen, we finally have a unified, secular, democratic nation state in the form of India, which has a standing army of its own to protect the entire country. This is a blessing which we unfailingly fail to count. It's a blessing that we need to cherish, and it is something that we should not be taking for granted at all. And in turning a blind eye to the issue of illegal immigration, we do grave injustice to the concept of a nation state, to the sovereignty of India. In the recent past, I had the opportunity to attend a certain conference where the discussion was about nationalism, and somebody struck a distinction between patriotism and nationalism. I don't want to get into the nuances of the distinction between the two because perhaps I'm not qualified to comment on it. But this much I think is for sure. National identities are here to stay for the foreseeable future. We still haven't arrived at a situation where we can afford to have the state wither away. We still haven't arrived at a state where national identities and geographic boundaries have been rendered redundant. And there perhaps is no better example in the recent past than the Brexit example. National identities continue to matter, and I think good fences make for good neighbors. And that's the only way for us to ensure that the sanctity of this country is maintained, the sanctity of its borders are maintained. By failing to address the issue of illegal immigration, the sovereign state and the dispensation is perhaps throwing to the winds the most important responsibility of a sovereign state, which is to protect its borders. And therefore, the Rohingya crisis is not a news peg in itself, but it throws up multiple questions from the standpoint of security, from the standpoint of social fabric, as to how we choose to identify and define the concept of secularism, and how we choose to respect the concept of a nation state. Does India have a grand narrative which speaks of its own civilizational identity? All these questions are raised by the Rohingya crisis.